can call you Amole and Swati and Aqsa, right? Lovely. Froggy, why is that?
All children know me as Froggy.
Okay, that's a very kid-friendly name, but super excited, child-friendly name. Super excited to be here, and it's a wonderful community that's come together this afternoon for a very, very important cause, which is inclusivity. So I thank you all for your time. Sorry to be the villains who drag you from your lunch, but I promise you that this will be a very interesting conversation. So let's start with this kid-friendly froggy of ours, Mr. Amol. I'm a big fan of Bollywood, and Tare Zameen Pe changed the narrative. For those of you who don't know, Tare Zameen Pe was a beautiful Bollywood movie which really depicted inclusivity in a very sensitive manner, way ahead of its times and very courageous. So my first question is that how did you have the courage to do that? And how did you ensure that the narrative was realistic yet very inspiring?
Hello, good morning, afternoon, everybody. Just a moment and a thought for all those children who have lost their schools in Los Angeles and its area. It's been in my mind from morning, so this is why I thought I'll bring it up here. And it's crushing to see educational institutions going up in flames, and children who were used to their midday meals there from the kitty of the government. They are searching for ways to reach food to the children there. Having said that, we are coming to Tare Zameen Par, which is in a way in the next sector after financial challenge. So I work with children with physical, mental, financial, and extreme, that is children with cancer, as a volunteer. It began long ago, and I took my son, who was barely 2.5, to a school which was so inclusive. Unfortunately, it was only up to the 4th standard. It's a beautiful school on Juhu Beach called Besant Montessori School. It was run by Auntie Dolly, who passed a few years ago. It was truly inclusive, which means that it's a small cohort of children. If you understand Montessori, group 1, group 2, prep, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th. 7 years. 7th year, you're in the 4th standard and you're still living by the same time code, which is just 4 hours every day for 5 days a week. So between 9 to 1 was academia, and that is where it ended. So I joined that school, first as a secretary of the PTA, and I was watching children with Down syndromes, children with other disabilities, physical disabilities, children who were sightless. They all merged together in a cohort which was normal. There was no definition of not normal. It built empathy among the children. The teachers understood how to access the children without sending them to the resource room, which is why there's no resource room in Tare Zameen Par. I could have put it there. Because I was moving around in Bombay academic circles, schools, and I knew that there was a way of functioning by segregating children and sending them to the resource room or getting them shadow teachers and so many other things. That is because the class strength was above 45 or 50. Impossible for a single teacher to bear that brunt and burden. Having said that, imagine my state. So I had to invent myself as the froggy, because I had to access children with a big beard and long hair. They were daunted, but once they knew I was a froggy, they started pelting stones at me. That proved the point for me, that now I can access their minds and hearts. And through that, I've been able to whittle out for over 4 years by being with Medha Lotlikar, an academician and an educationist, both in special ed and general ed. She's an MEd. She had 2 special schools, Tulips and Saraswati Mandir. Kate Karawala, I don't know if somebody represents her here, from the Maharashtra Dyslexia Association. I was doing summer workshops with those children, And when I used to take my able-bodied brethren to such a workshop, and when I showed them the children doing their physiotherapy exercises, look to your right, look in front. They're just merely imitating the lady who's showing them what to do. And these friends of mine used to say, how sad, how sad. And then the next was my session. And we used to play memory games. 50 new names they had to invent. I call myself Froggy. Somebody's an apple, somebody's an astronaut. And the sequence of 50 names, every child remembered as if he was reciting Om Bhurvua Swaha. You understand? So it was that active, the mind. How can you call this child disabled? The gift of dyslexia we are talking about, we all know about it. So it had to be celebrated in some form or the other. And luckily I had Amir, who wept into a Turkish white towel the morning when I narrated it to him. So we kind of took it to the world. And which is a good thing, because it's been a run since then. And I've been trying to achieve things in the children's sector, always. But that's the genesis of Tare Zameen Par. Sitting with the children, the stakeholders, which is why I never use the word kid. Because 3-letter word versus child, 5-letter word. I choose child over kid. Because we shouldn't be kidding. Thank you.
I think this is beautiful, but what this shows, the key takeaway is, one of our podcasts we did, the words they used is no sympathy, only empathy. And you spend the time to sit with them, to understand them, and use empathy and humor to draw the best out of them. So I think such a well-researched, bottom of the, straight from the heart endeavor that's still remembered and watched and inspires many. Swati, I'll come back to you. Swati, over to you now. Satyameva Jayate. Another brilliant, brilliant endeavor. And again, for those who don't know it, it was a series again by Amir Khan, picking very brave topics, So I think the panel here should be called the very courageous, daring panel, because they've done things that people only talk about but are too scared to implement. And you executed it beautifully. And in Satyamev Jayate, you had one full episode on people with disabilities and deep dived into Amar Jyoti School in Delhi as a case study of what a best practice or center of excellence looks like. What inspired you to do that, and what were the learnings from that?
So, first up, wonderful to be here. Thank you so much, my dear friends at Vakeel and everyone else. It's amazing to see so many people sitting in a room discussing a very, very important subject dear to my heart. So here's the thing. I think exclusion is like a 10-headed Ravan. Exclusion has many faces. And we see exclusion in our daily lives, in the fabric of our society. All kinds of exclusion. And the effort behind Satyamev Jayate was to include conversations of exclusion and make us all wonder a little bit, can we see our faces in the mirror that is held in front of us? And can we, and we had one very important principle for the selection of every topic, which is that every single person who watches the show should feel, yes, I am impacted by this issue, and I can also do something, no matter how empowered or disempowered I am, I can do something to make a change. And that was the benchmark for selecting every subject that we took up, including the one on the differently abled. And so that's why we did that, and we felt that it was among the most important subjects in the country, and it was part of our first season. What can I say, like today I'm going to go back so enriched. All of us who were touched by that episode, our entire team, we felt deeply enriched by that whole experience of research and filming and meeting so many wonderful people.
What did Amar Jyoti School do differently that you highlighted? Just some 4 or 5 bullet points in terms of best practices that others can learn from.
So I think Amar Jyoti's whole approach to education is it's not just about let me empower somebody, but how about we all get together and empower each other? I think that is just brilliant. That just hits you. The second thing I found was the extreme enthusiasm, love, camaraderie that I witnessed with the children. I spent many days there, right from the morning assembly prayer to the, to the end of the day. And I was privileged to observe the classes, the braille room, the games spaces, the tiffin spaces. And what is very, very interesting about the Amarjyoti experience for me was I saw many children who were neurotypical or who were, not specially abled. They were actually taking the help of their neurodivergent classmates. And similarly, the help was being given. So it was not just about it was a give and take constantly. And that is something amazing. And I feel that the positivity that I felt there, I didn't feel any sense of doom and gloom. When we met and interviewed many of the young children studying there, they had so many things to tell us, which were not at all like, dialogues that sometimes you feel that a person who's participating in some kind of show or event is coached to say a few things which are going to have that tear drop from your eye and roll down your cheek and that. But there was nothing like that. There were some amazing home truths, and like the story of the child who opens the episode when she says that, I just love my mom. She just loves me. I press her feet when she is tired. Mom is very tired sometimes. And, you feel that, yeah, the mom is giving this child a lot, but the child is also giving the mom back. And that's what life is all about. It's not about making you feel bad about things. It's about making us understand that it's not that person's need that I'm fulfilling. It is also my own and a social need. So it's a common good. So to include is not the requirement of the differently abled. To include is a basic human right and a requirement for any society that wants to stand on its feet and walk straight and not stand on its head.
That is so beautifully said. And both you and Amole use storytelling to inspire, but to tell those stories, you spend days there to really be in their shoes and understand things. And I think that's so beautiful. So thank you for sharing that. Aqsa, over to you. Wanted to ask you that transgender as a topic can be either something that's sensationalized by the media or used as a tool of inclusivity. What has been your experience on how media has portrayed this very important topic?
Yeah, thanks, Namita, and good afternoon to everyone. I hope post-lunch you're all awake. Yes. Oh, I heard a yes over there. So I remember when Dr. Sujata asked me to join for this conference, which is on education and especially dealing with learning disabilities, etc. I was wondering what would I be doing in that conference as an able-bodied person. But then when I look back at the title, which talks about embracing diversity, intersectionality, and when I was listening to Dr. Rose in the morning, who mentioned that, the marginalizations are not just at one level, but at multiple levels. For example, if you're a Muslim girl with disability and born into poverty, naturally there's multiple levels of barriers that you need to cross. And as a trans person, when I look at all these educators in the room, I'll come to the question that you asked, but just wanted to point this out. I'm taken back to my school days. I was born and brought up in Mumbai. And I studied in a very nice school called Wilson High School. Some of you might have heard about it. It's in Girgaon, yes. And then I went to a very nice college, DG Ruparel College. And then I went to a very nice medical school, that is KEM Hospital and St. GS Medical College. But in spite of all that, I didn't have very good teachers like all of you there. When I say good teachers, I mean inclusive teachers who understood me as a transgender child, adolescent, and an adult and embraced my diversity. And that's why when I was in an all-boys school, you can imagine the trauma. And then later on in the college and the medical school, I felt very left out. I was in a cocoon. I mean, the amount of words that I've spoken now, I wouldn't speak in a week over there. And therefore, it feels very nice that all of you are here now and listening to someone who was a shy, introvert, marginalized, in the cocoon type of transgender child, and who, because of that, had immense mental health issues and also often thought of ending the life. The city, all the light that we imagine in the city is not enough actually, to bring light to a lot of people who face all these kind of marginalizations, and that's why I had to leave the city and go to Delhi because I couldn't survive this city where my transness was not accepted, especially, as a doctor who is also trans. And I'm very happy to now come back to this city, at least for a conference, and to be amongst all the educators. And I hope that somewhere with my story, you will go back in your schools, colleges, departments, and maybe create an environment whereby, students like me will find enough confidence in coming and telling you that this is who I am. And you're like, oh, this is who I am. And yeah, we both are normal and abnormal in whatever way you want to say. So when it comes to media, being in Mumbai, and you said you love Bollywood. I also used to love Bollywood. I was a big fan of Sri Devi. I used to dance on the Nagin dance. Of course, we do that in Delhi in weddings nowadays. She was my idol kind. But then I also had movies, which had those gay caricatures with that wrist drop, and they were portrayed, and Bobby Darlings, and I was shown trans people in movies. I'll use the term, some of you may not understand it. It's hijra kinnar. We know this term, right? And I was very afraid of hijra people because I was told in my childhood कि ये लोग आके बच्चे पकड़ के ले जाते हैं. So you have to go and hide. I'll translate it for those who won't understand Hindi. It's like transgender people from a cultural context in India, which is called the Hijra community, that these people will snatch or kidnap babies, and therefore you're supposed to hide when they come to your doorstep. With that experience, and it was portrayed in our movies, in some of very famous Bollywood movies, which we glorified for showing, oh, what a courageous portrayal of trans people, but actually it was very bad. Coming to now, when we, on the OTT platforms, every other movie has a queer, trans, gender queer character. Every next, season will get it, every episode will get it. But I think that's used very cosmetically. And is it really inclusive if the people who are writing those characters are not behind the screen, not in front of the screen, or are not immersing themselves like how Amole and Svati have done, So there is a lot of sensationalizing. There is also a lot of hope. But yes, a lot of work that needs to be done. And I think the people on that side have a lot to contribute.
So beautifully said, Aqsa, because, And you're absolutely right, because I remember on 15th August, I had an episode release again on the podcast with Lakshmi Tripathi on just this topic. And the kind of trolls I got when I put that up, it was very disheartening to see that even in this day and age, this is the kind of hate and almost ignorance that is out there. So I so agree with you that it's very cosmetic, but the depth we need to go to is not there at this point. Now, coming back to Amole and Svati, a joint question for the two of you, related to what I just spoke to Aqsa now. So you made, your episodes came out, or your movie came out a fairly long time back, right? So you've seen that, the response to the movie, Satyamev Jayate, and then now today. Do you think there's been progress in this field? Do you think that it was just one of those things people watched and then forgot? Or given that you've immersed yourself in this field, you have seen some green shoots? Honest answer, the good, bad and ugly.
I would say that we really had a terribly, terribly, terribly low baseline. Where do you start? So any progress seems like so insignificant and insufficient, and because there is progress. You can't diss everything that is positive, and I would definitely not want to be that person. But at the same time, we have to recognize that inclusivity has not been built into things from the very beginning. Like you say, na, bake a cake from scratch. Then everything you need has to be there. Our cake was baked without inclusivity. It was never there from scratch. Now if you're trying to add it on top, what will you put? Just a cherry? And how can the cherry be ever enough to feed an entire, host of people? It cannot.
So, is the answer that there's been no progress? I'm going to put you on a tough spot. Is the answer that, how many years back was your episode? 10 years? Was it 10 years back?
There is some progress, but it's just not enough. It is just not enough. I can say that I can speak as a parent of a neurodivergent child, as well as an aunt and a friend to so many neurodivergents. There is just not enough happening. And I wouldn't say it's only at the level of government or infrastructure. I think socially, we have immense amount of, pardon the French, backwardness drilled within us that is preventing us as a society to understand that inclusivity is our need. It's everyone's need. And I think unless and until we do some deep introspection, thinking, a lot of action, a lot of different activities, it is not going to change that quickly.
I concur with Swati when she says that आपके केक में ही अगर वो नहीं है inclusivity, तो क्या आप खाक ऊपर से चेरी डालेंगे? It's so true, and I'm here facing a sea of teachers and mentors, correct? So I would go back to my early teacher. First of all, Nikum sir, to whom I paid a tribute in Tare Zameen Par. The art teacher, there was no counselor, but he was a sensible man, and he could walk the child holding his hand to the horizon. That was the first learning of acceptance. But we love to shove things under the carpet. And we are part of the same society. Who's that, please? Okay. So, what I would imagine, and pardon me, because I took an early lesson from Medha Lotlikar, who was a beacon of wisdom. And when she was running these two schools for extremely challenged children, she was briefing the teachers that you are not a judge in a courthouse. You are a teacher in a classroom. Never should a teacher forget that. He or she is not going to judge the child. The job of the teacher is to continuously and relentlessly share knowledge with the child. And at what speed the child accepts and absorbs, leave it to the child, and you will make a dent. But what happens is the teacher brings in his or her own sociology into the class. The fights that they've had in the house come into the classroom. The teacher transforms into a class bully. So one has to leave those shoes out of the classroom. Only then can you make a friendship, because I'll just give you an example from my own childhood. The teachers that I remember to date are the teachers who I hated, and there were many. Some of them I played in films, like Stanley Ka Dabba. And the teachers I loved, who cast a spell in the classroom. So first of all, I think B.Ed and M.Ed should have a Grotowski kind of theatre studies class for every teacher, in order to hold the attention of the child first, because that's not negotiable. You have to hold a spell in the classroom. I used to volunteer at a municipal school in Bandra, Pali Chimbai, and I started with doing English lessons with third standards. And I still know children who were in that class in 2008 remember the lesson that I took. Maybe it might be something about a flower or any of those curricular things. but which meant that I was capable of giving more to them in that same class. So I said, let me now add cinema and theatre studies there. So 10 years I ran a cinema and theatre studies class with the most non-privileged children from the nearby slums. Some of them were accepted by Whistling Woods for free. 15, and they passed out as filmmakers. And that made the change in their lives. When they sat with their supple spines, we started with khichdi, of course, because empty stomach, you can't ingest cinema. So once you eat and you watch on a soiled white sheet, Pathir Panchali, with so much interest that maybe middle and upper middle class children don't have the patience for. So when you saw they were watching with rapt attention, it meant that they wanted to change their lives. So that motivation was from within, and which is why they could ingest Majid Majidi and Bimal Roy and Dobiga Zameen and things. Having said that, that's one thing which brings me back to Medha Lotlikar, and that is, please do not judge the child, teach the child. And the second thing which she said, because she is a special ed and a general ed MEd, so which means she knows both the sides. So some red flag she raised was that the special ed person looks at the child as a patient, and the general ed person looks at the same child as a truant child and not paying attention. So there has to be a mid path. So include special ed into general ed, include general ed into special ed, in order to make it an actual pulsating and palpable inclusive room of learning and teaching. Because if that happens, then there is hope. Otherwise, we just keep talking.
Lovely. So talking of hope and not just keep talking, Aqsa, I want your views, and then all three of you to tell me 2 bullet points. What is it that you hope to see in the next 2 years that we can do specifically to change mindsets?
So, 2025 resolution time, yes. So, but it has to be completed by the end of 31st December. Yeah. So, one, I think when we talk about gender inclusivity, or, embracing diversity, we know it all has to begin very, very early. And by very early, I mean, it probably has to begin before the child even can utter the first word, right? And of course, must continue later. And therefore, there's a lot of role of schools in ensuring that this diversity is not taught, but is lived in those schools. Unfortunately, there are a lot of red tapes at the level of the policies, at the level of the laws, governments, their own opinions and the ideology that they follow, because of which it's very difficult to talk about sex, sexuality, gender, contraception, or anything else, to children. Though they can go to Instagram at the age of 13 years, and of course they can go before that also, 13 is too late, and they have everything. But in school they can't talk about it, or you can't go and talk about it. And it's all because of certain policies at the government levels. And I think we need some kind of mass movement for wiser, educated people to tell the governments that ho gaya, okay, you've served your vote banks or whatever, now it's time to change. And ensure that children get the information that they need, and not what you want to teach them as part of, our Sanskriti or whatever. So I think that's a very important thing. If children can have that diversity experience, right? And by diversity, I mean all kinds of diversity. And second, I think is very important, since a lot of people are also here from higher educational institute, is that a lot of people like me who went through the schools, whatever may have been the experience, and now are in the higher educational institutes, that's another barrier. And in higher educational institutes, life can get very, very difficult. And a lot of you have a role to play in that, in ensuring that, whatever policies, because we do have a Transgender Act in our country, we have Rights for Persons with Disability Act, are they implemented? You have UGC regulations to prevent sexual harassment at university and college levels. So whatever laws are there, which are there on the paper right now, it's important to put them into practice. So maybe have one or two points कि okay हमारे यहाँ पे equal opportunity cell नहीं है, या policy displayed नहीं है, या ICC नहीं है, या for trans people there has to be a complaint officer in every university. It's not there. By 31st December I'm going to get that done. And maybe write a letter to the Prime Minister and say ki why are we not teaching gender to children in our schools? Maybe two things we all can do.
Brilliant, brilliant 2 pointers. Swati.
So I think that the first one for me would be that there should be immense recognition for all teachers who are doing terrific work in inclusion. We need to recognize, reward, and thank all of you deeply, and I think we need to have some kind of system for that to come into place, and there have to be some really sort of well recognized and talked about awards that go out to all of you. I know there are 3 people in this room who have deeply touched my life personally, whom I want to thank. That's Archana for letting me into Jai Vakeel and see that life. Dinaz Wadia, who's been a beacon of hope and light and a guiding star in my life. And someone who doesn't know me but whom I know as Moy's mom, whom I have always followed on social media and I have been so deeply touched and inspired by. I think that the fact that we love all of you and you are so inspired by you needs to be put out there officially. And the second thing I think is that as I'm a communicator, I feel I would love to see a national campaign on inclusivity rolling out. That is, all over through the whole year with action points that anybody in society can actually pick up and say, हाँ ये तो मैं कर सकती हूँ, ये तो मैं कर सकता हूँ. I would just love to see India reverberate with a campaign and an action plan of that kind.
That is so beautifully said, Swati.
2 things you said.
So we can actually make it happen.
Yeah, we should make 20 things happen actually. But let's begin with 2 things. First thing is we are in 2025. Back in 2004, when my son walked into Besant Montessori, it was in practice. What is a dream that we are talking about today? It was in full practice because each cohort of children, be it group 1, group 2 prep, first, second, third, fourth, cohort of not more than 12 children, 14 children. Teachers, children ratio was 5 teachers to 15 children. Excellent ratio. That was one. Second thing was, if there was a Down's child and a cerebral palsy child and what you call a normal child, they all were the same. And they fought the outsider for the respect and love of their cohort, which means they were unnamed, they were unjudged, and they were all together. And why was this? Because Auntie Dolly, the teachers are not called Miss or Ma'am, it's aunties. So Auntie Dolly Wadia, was seated where she was when I went for Partho's admission, my son's admission. And I thought the lady who was seated in the center of that desk must be the head of institution. Voila, that was just the clerk. The person sitting in front of her with 3 other chairs and about 75 years old then, with 7, 8 children stuck to her, that was Auntie Dolly. So that's an example which is very difficult for me to take off my memory system. So which means what we are thinking of for the next 2 years has already happened. The need is to be completely sensitive to the requirement. So in such a cohort, I found my best friend. I won't name him, of course. So he's neurodivergent. And he was 5 when I first met him. And Dinaz is there, his teacher. For 21 years, I've been filming him. And he is so talented. He randomly downloads Mozart, Beethoven, Bach, and just plays as if He was rehearsing it for the last 5 years. And he's still waiting for a job. Now he has the IUDI, or am I saying it? UDID. He has it. He just got it. I forced myself into that system to get that goddamn ID released through some help at Nair Hospital. But having said that, that's the second thing. The first thing is a dream of the past, which if it resurfaces in every school, then every school is a Shanti Niketan, every school is a Besant Montessori. And the second thing is, I'm waiting for my boy, who's all of 26 now, to be employed. I've taken him to music directors. They've all promised, yeah. I said, get him as a sessions musician. Give him a 5,000 rupee check. You give 10,000 bucks to the other piano player. This guy's a better piano player than you. He sung on my Stanley Ka Dabba CD. He has an ID on that. He's sung the main song. Tere andar bhi kahin chup ke baitha hai koi Stanley. Having said that, these are the two things I await. The resurgence of a Besant Montessori in every school, and my boy to be gainfully employed and not see himself in cafe coffee day serving you coffee. Because he doesn't merit that. He's a genius.
I think we should all take notes of these 6 specific points and really evaluate ourselves at the next conference. Aqsa beautifully spoke about at schools having the right sex education and talking about the taboo topics so that you educate. At the higher education centers, having the chief complaint officer and having the policies in place. Swati spoke beautifully about number 1, an inclusivity, national inclusivity campaign and awards for teachers so that they're recognized, celebrated, and we make case studies out of our unsung heroes. And Amole beautifully spoke about, the Montessori system, keeping the sensitivity, the love, the kindness, and most importantly, job creation that's not just a sympathy job, but that in line with their competence. That's more respectful. So I think 6 very specific points that we should evaluate next year when we all meet. One last question, because I think we still have 5 minutes. Media, since media is the topic here, media is all about storytelling. And you've spoken about a bunch of stories here, whether it's, the boy who pressed his mum's legs or Dolly, Miss Dolly. But one more story, either from your personal life, something you've seen in the media, that will touch our hearts and give us a message today. One story from each of you of some child and some story of resilience, positivity, and something that will stay with us.
I think I'll start. Sequential and also alphabetical. Not alphabetical, you are first in alphabetical order. Yeah. So, I spoke of the negative examples of media when I was growing up, but I'll speak of a positive example of media when I was growing up, and it was from another TV show which used to come on NDTV at that time. So when I discovered my gender identity and I knew that these are the options for me, and I told my family members about it. Of course, it was a lot of shock for them. And my mom was like, and I was in 3rd year of my MBBS at that time when this happened. So my mom was like, "Tum doctor ban rahe ho, ab tum hijra ban jaoge." That was the kind. He's like, "Tumhe naukri nahi milegi, phir tum traffic signal pe bheek mangoge, wo train mein jaate hain waise." That was the idea. And of course, it was kind of the idea that was fed to her. And I was like, how do I show to her how a trans person looks like, after transition? And then I showed that episode to her in which there was Ghazal Dhaliwal. For those of you who don't know Ghazal Dhaliwal, you might have, of course, seen some movies written by her or some shows written by her. Like, for example, Ek Ladki Ko Dekha To Aisa Laga, right? And in that, there was an episode of Ghazal pre and post transition, and that she's a successful screenwriter, filmmaker now. And I'm like, this is how I'm going to be. I'm not going to lose my job. I'm not going to be begging on the streets. I will still have an MBBS degree, and I'll be a good doctor also at that time. And she remained silent after that. I mean, she didn't say, because such kadwa hota hai. But I think it's something changed inside her, after watching Ghazal on the screen. So, and now I think a lot of people have covered my stories, and when people come and tell me कि हमने आपका video अपनी मम्मी को दिखाया, हमने आपका TED Talk या Josh Talk अपनी मम्मी को दिखाया, and then she's like, okay, तुम अक्सा जैसी बनोगी. So, I think we are continuing the chain and the cycle over there. With that, I also want to thank Swati. When in Satyamev Jayate, that episode of trans and queer people came, and Simran, who is now a very good friend of mine, was also there on that show. And everyone was watching very awkwardly because I was also there in that room. And like, hamari beti bhi yahi ban jayegi. Of course, they used to call me beta at that time. But I think somewhere that thing that we can't really discuss on our dinner tables was there on the screen in front of you, and you were unprepared for it. Like, आप क्या करेंगे? So that really helped. So yes, there are a lot of positive examples also.
Thank you. Svati. You go next. पहले आप.
Actually, I subscribe to a lot of positivity podcasts and positivity feeds on Instagram and so on. Like, I only look at that stuff. So I can't think of any one thing, but okay, just as I was coming here, because there are just, what I think honestly, that there are just tons and tons and tons and millions of positive people doing positive things. And if we are able to just create a repository, a magical repository of all those stories, all the problems of this world can be solved. We can solve all the problems. Today, while I was heading here, I was watching a little clip on Instagram. I can't remember the name of the film, Amole. It's a Christmas, I think it's called A Christmas Miracle or something. There, and Richard Attenborough is playing the role of Santa Claus. And he's in some kind of a store space or something, and there is this little girl who's sitting in front of him. And there's a lady who comes and tells him that you don't need to talk to her. You can just sit here. And he nods kindly, lovely, beautiful beard, kind eyes, and this little girl sitting in front of him. And then she says, you don't have to talk to her. She's deaf. She can't hear you anyway. And then she goes away. And then Attenborough starts speaking to the child in sign language. And that moment is just magical, because apparently that little kid is really deaf. And she didn't know that Attenborough knows sign language. And Attenborough just surprised her with the sign language and that expression on her face. But not just the expression on her face, but the expression on Attenborough's face. Because what she gave him was a gift that is immeasurable. And I feel that is what I get, an immeasurable gift, every time I see a video or read a story or hear a podcast about someone who, created a miracle, I would say. I don't want to say overcame odds and obstacles and all this, but you create a miracle.
Beautiful.
Yeah, positive story, but with a twist in the end. होना चाहिए ना? वरना हम क्या घास काट रहे हैं? So again, not naming, little boy in my theatre and cinema studies class in a municipal school in Bandra. Grew up, I ran the class for 11 years, Saturday to Saturday. And the resolution every year used to be that the children make a film with a PD 150, according to, till they upgraded to a mini DV camera things. So the boy made a beautiful film, and he was an undergrad, 9th standard boy. Then he attempted one more when it was my birthday, and he shocked me with a 7-minute film called Tahan. In Marathi means thirst. So this boy, without naming, he happens to be a municipal sweeper widow who got her job because her husband passed away. Her son. And when I showed the film as a masterclass at Whistling Woods, and the children and the staff took it to Subhash Ghai. And he said, this is my opportunity to build what my children don't have at Whistling Woods. They have money to pay the fees, but they are not empathetic to what is around them. So the boy got his scholarship. That was the first boy who went there, free of cost. But that's not where the story ends. Because he was learned, made his mark there, and he completed a Marathi film. A beautiful film called Funter. Yeah, but the sad part is that I've been trying to peddle it for the last 1.5 years without success. Jio ya mat jio, koi nahi le raha hai. But that's not where it ends. So the boy who put his and his friends' money and life in peril by making Funter has last month signed up because his mother retired as the sweeper from BMC. Now he's signed up as a sweeper with BMC. After Whistling Woods, after making a film. Tumits vichar kara, meaning think about it. Thank you.
Thank you. I think this panel has left everybody in this room speechless. There are loss of words. But what is the one thing or the two things that I would like to leave everyone with is firstly, thank you very much. A lot of gratitude from us here for organizing this, because it's really touched our hearts. It's really, really given us goosebumps, and that's so important in life, to experience something this beautiful. And then the second thing is, again, on behalf of this panel, we hope this tribe grows, that every year we join you. There are more milestones to celebrate, fewer negative stories and more positive stories, more strides we make, more measurable achievements, and this tribe grows to really give India its place in the sun where this important topic is concerned. Thank you so much. Pleasure.